Hello, welcome to Z Talk. If you follow my channel, I had a session for a distributed tracing solution Jaeger a couple of weeks ago, and I had a demo to download and run those Jaeger executables. Here's the link to that session to refresh your mind. Please feel free to jump over there and take a look. I got some good feedbacks and questions since the session was posted. Firstly, thank you so much for that. One of the questions was, how do we start those executables as a daemon process? I think it's a good question. Even I run into the same requirements at work. So I wanted to use this session to show you how do I run these executables as a systemd service. Also, I think it's a good idea or good practice to pick up another topic I started earlier about Ansible. So I'm gonna create a Ansible role for Jaeger to have those executables running as a service for this session. All right, and then I think you can use this role to integrate with your infrastructure as code solution like Terraform to automate this whole deployment process if you have the similar use case in your environment. All right, cool. By the way, regarding Ansible, I had a setup demo previously using Docker. Here's the link. If you're new to Ansible, maybe take a look at that session first to get an idea how does Ansible work. For this session, I'm not gonna explain Ansible from the beginning. There are tons of good tutorials out there if you are interested in Ansible. Uh, uh, so I will walk you through some advanced feature like role directly. Okay, cool. So first question I guess is why Ansible role? So basically, roles are the recommended way of developing a playbook in Ansible. Roles help us organize our project in a standard structure. So you may ask, what exactly does that mean when you create a role? It when you create a role, it automatically creates folder structure for you that contains a set of folders like tasks, handlers, vars, defaults, etc. And also README files is initiated along with those folders. These helps in creating the role following the best practices. All right. So once roles are created, it's easy to use them in any part of your playbook, and our main playbook is going to look simpler and more readable, right? And another two advantages of Ansible roles are that we can reuse our codes easily, and we can share our work with open community through Ansible Galaxy, which is similar as GitHub or Docker Hub. When you want to create a role for your requirements, it's always a good idea to browse in Ansible Galaxy because more than likely there were already roles with similar purposes out there for your reference, or even just use directly. You can just download the role that was shared by other developers in Galaxy and use them directly, which saves you a lot of time, right? Okay, one way to create an Ansible role is to use Ansible Galaxy command, like the example here in the slide. Um, uh, the folder structure will be automatically generated for us once we issue this command. Ansible-galaxy init and the name of our role. Um, there were and then once the role is created, we can call the roles in our playbook, something like this. In the right side of the slide, This is the example playbook, and all you need to do is to include the role you created, like web server right here. All right, but we can create Ansible role via this command, which makes our life easier. It automatically generates the structure, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean we have to use this command. We can actually create Ansible role manually if you are familiar with the structure of the role. Okay. Here, talking about role structure, let me walk you through what each of these folders being used. All right, let's start with defaults. The defaults directory is for defining the variable defaults. The variables in defaults have the lowest priority, thus becoming easy to override. If definition of a variable is nowhere else, the variable in defaults /main.yaml will be used. The next folder is called files. We use the files directory to add files that are needed by provisioning machine without modification. Mostly we use copy task for referencing files in the files directory. The most interesting part about it is that Ansible does not require a path for resources stored in files directory when working in the role. I will show you shortly in the demo. Next one, handler. The handler directory is used for storing Ansible handlers. Handlers are tasks that may be flagged during a play to run at the play's completion. We can have as many or as few handlers as we needed. I will show you example shortly because we're gonna create a new service for Jaeger, right? So after we create a service, we have to reload the daemon. That's a good use case for handler. All right. Cool. Next one, meta. We use the meta directory to store authorship information, which is useful if we choose to publish or roll on Galaxy repository. The metadata of an Ansible role consists of other supported platforms and dependencies. Next one, tasks. Tasks. The task directory is where we write most of our roles, which includes all the tasks our role will perform. We write each series of tasks in a excuse me. We write each series of tasks in a separate file and include them into the main.yaml file in the tasks directory. All right. Next one, templates. We use templates directory to also add files to our machine. It's kind of similar to files directory. The only difference between templates and files directories is that the templates directory supports alteration or modification. Jinja language is used to create these alterations. Most software configuration files turn to become templates. Tests. We can use the tests directory if we have built an automated testing process around our role. This directory contains a sample inventory and a test.yaml file. Last but not least, vars. This is where we create variable files that define necessary variables for our role. The variables defined in this directory are meant for role internal use only. Also, it's a good idea to namespace or role variables names to prevent potential naming conflicts with variables outside of the role. All right, cool. Um, all right. With understanding of Ansible role, I think we're ready to get hands-on. Uh, I've already created two Ubuntu VMs on VirtualBox for this demo. By the way, for playing with Ansible, I think the easiest way is to use Docker image, like what I demoed in the previous session for setting Ansible. You can use like existing Docker image on Docker Hub, or you can also create your own Docker image for your testing. But for this special case, we're gonna need to use because we're gonna need to use systemd, and you will run into some issues when you issue system cuddle command if you choose to use Docker Ubuntu image, something um, something like this. Fail to get dbus connection, operation not permitted. This is because normally when you run a container, you are not running an init system. However, system cuddle is the process that communicates with systemd over bus. If you're interested in this issue and want to dig in, here is some reference with solutions, and I'm gonna share these in the description of this session. So feel free to take a look. And I also gonna share like Docker images that solve this issue, like Ubuntu Docker image with system D enabled. All right, cool. Uh, like I mentioned, for this demo, I already created two Ubuntu VM via VirtualBox. To I will quickly jump over there. So before I moved over there, remember thumb up my video and uh, subscribe my channel if you haven't done so. And again, feel free to leave any comments or questions. I'd love to hear your feedback. All right, cool. By the way, for setting up the demo environment, if you also use VirtualBox, um, you can download whatever OS images from these websites. I'll share again. I'll share this URL in the description of of the video. All right, you can just search for a VM a VirtualBox image and click that and search for like Ubuntu. Here you can just search for Ubuntu, and here you can got basically all the flavors of different operating system right here, and then you can download and import these VDI to your VirtualBox. All right, and for Ansible Galaxy, here's the website. Just Google Ansible Galaxy, and like I mentioned, every time you needed to create a role, firstly take a look if there are similar roles already being created in the Galaxy repo. Like for example, let's search Jaeger, and here we go. And someone already shared a Jaeger role right here. You can take a look here, or if it's good enough, you can just install by this command, Ansible Galaxy install this role. All right, that's basically I want to show you, and then let's jump to our demo to create our own Jaeger role for running those Jaeger components executables as service. Cool. All right, here we are. I got two Linux VMs up and running. And on the left side, you can see this is the um, VM where we're gonna install Jaeger and its components. As we're still gonna use Elasticsearch as the backend storage. The Elasticsearch already up and running on this server as a service. As you can see, system CDL status Elasticsearch service, and it's running. And on the right side, it's gonna be our Ansible controller, where we're gonna configure our role and then push to these Jaeger VM. All right. So I already set up the connection. So here's the little test to make sure the Ansible works. So basically, I just issue Ansible and push the configuration or like here I use the ping module to test the connection between these two servers is working, right? So Ansible Jaeger Jaeger is this server, the alias of this VM, and hit enter, and okay, the ping was successful, so we're good to go. So now let's create a Jaeger role. So as I mentioned, we can use the Ansible Galaxy command, Ansible Galaxy init, and the name of the role will be Jaeger. So once you issue this command, you should be able to see a Jaeger a folder structure being created. Like, let's go into the folder, and you can see there is a list of folders being created for us, so we can modify in the file in each of the folders. Or if you're familiar with Ansible, you can create these folders manually, because if we use this one, it's automatically does that for us, but it's not it doesn't necessarily mean we have to use each of these folder. It's really depends on our use cases. Sometimes if the role is really simple, we don't have to use all of these folders. We just maybe use tasks, defaults, something like that. All right. So that's pretty much the preparation. And let's moving forward to configure the role. All right, let's start with defaults directory. This is on your right side. This is the main the YAML file inside of defaults directory. Inside this file, what I did was to define some variables. So if you move to the left side, here I had another session for the same VM, and as you can see, this is the Jaeger binaries looks like after we download from Jaeger website. All right. If we and archive these binaries, this is what we got. You're gonna create a folder, and inside of this folder, there's a list of Jaeger executables. So for my use case, I'm only gonna use Jaeger query and Jaeger collector components. So I'm gonna create services for these two components. The rest of it, I'm not gonna use it. It really depends on your use case. Basically, these two components are the most important ones. The Jaeger collector is the components to hook up with your application. Basically, your application is feeding spans, tracing spans to Jaeger collector, and Jaeger collector is hooked up with the backend storage, and also hook up with Jaeger query, which is the user GUI where we can get access to see the tracing information. All right, so back to the right session, the session on the right. As you can see, what I did was to tokenize the name of this folder. Basically, that's for example, in the future, if we need to upgrade our Jaeger components, or we need to call these Jaeger role that we're currently building on other OS platform, we can just modify the variables here in a centralized location instead of updating all the configuration files inside of the Jaeger role. If we didn't variabilize our configuration, which is going to be tedious, right? That's the benefits of the variables. So as you can see, basically I break these the name of these Jaeger folder into pieces and tokenize each piece. Like for example, Jaeger ID. I tokenize these field as Jaeger ID, and another variable called Jaeger artifact underscore version to store this piece, and Jaeger OS to store these piece, and Jaeger arc to store the last piece. So next time, for example, when we need to upgrade, we just need to change the artifact underscore version variable to the new version we download from the Jaeger website, something like that, right? And also I defined a variable install underscore dir to store the location where we want to store these Jaeger file. And then I create another variable called Jaeger underscore dir. Basically is composed of those token variables that I defined above, right? And after that, on these parts, those are the environmental variable for Elasticsearch. As we discussed, we're going to use Elasticsearch as the backend storage. So this is basically these two variables are mandatory environmental variables we need to use when we start these Jaeger executables. If we you can see those environment variables in the Jaeger documentation. All right, and these two are mandatory. Basically, these two environment variables are define the Jaeger sampler strategy. All right, cool. That's pretty much defaults. Let's move to the next one. All right, we just finished up defining the variables inside of defaults directory, and now let's jump out into the tasks directory. So as remember, this is the location, or this is the directory where we define all of the tasks this Jaeger role is gonna be performing. So let's start creating two tasks, basically to mimic the task we did right here manually. Here we need what we need to do here. I'm still on the Ansible VM, right? What we need to do, we need to transfer or copy these Jaeger binaries from Ansible VM to the other VM we created where we're gonna host Jaeger components, right? So, and after these binaries transferred, we need to unarchive these files like what we did manually right here. Right? Cool. Here we go. Inside of the task directory in the main.yaml, I created two tasks. The first one is copy these Jaeger binary from these Ansible VM to the other VM where Jaeger will be hosted. Okay, so I use the copy module to this step is for copy Jaeger binaries right here. So this is the location of the source. As you can see, I basically use those variables, those tokens we define in the defaults variable, defaults folder, and this section is the install underscore dir, and artifact ID, which is Jaeger hyphen artifact version, Jaeger underscore OS, and Jaeger underscore arc, and the extension is .targz, right? And destination, I'm gonna send these file to the same location as right here, and the mode will be 664. All right, that's the first step. The next step is going to be unarchive these Jaeger binaries to something like this. In that case, the source is this guy, and the destination is just I'm gonna unarchive these file to this destination, which install underscore dir. Basically, this is this location, right? Straightforward and simple, right? So let's save it and test it out. So what we need to do, we need to jump back get out of this role and create a Ansible playbook. So here in the playbook, I will just include these roles Jaeger, right? And let's run this playbook to see what we got. And let's move this session out. And here, this session is for the VM, the Jaeger VM, right? As you can see, this is the location we're gonna copy that Jaeger binaries to. So here, let's do ls. Right now there's nothing, and let's issue the Jaeger, the Ansible playbook command. All right, now it's executing those tasks. So firstly, it's copy Jaeger binaries, and then it unarchive Jaeger binaries. So the first task is already done. So let's see, and you see the Jaeger binaries was already copied to these Jaeger VM, and then you're gonna archive. Let's see if archive is also done. Let's see. Right. So as you can see, the second step, an archive Jaeger binary was also successful, and there was a new folder created. And let's go inside of these folder. We should be able to see a list of Jaeger executables. Cool, it's worked. So let's continue on. All right, we have verified these two tasks were working as expected. So before we continue on creating the other tasks, let's exit out first, because we need to create a shell script to start up those Jaeger executables. So that's going to be stored in the file directory. So let's go to files directory. And inside this directory, I created another directory called Bing, and go to Bing. As you can see, I create two shell scripts for starting up these two Jaeger component, Jaeger collector and Jaeger query accordingly. So it's pretty easy shell script. Let's start with Jaeger collector. As you can see, I just kick off, just start run these Jaeger executables. So here I will explain shortly where did I define these Jaeger underscore home environment variable. Basically, it's gonna be in the systemd service configuration. And after these run these Jaeger collector executable, this guy, if we do manually. So after run these executable, I also added a flag. It's really based on my use case. It's optional. So because I needed to open these zip imports, if you see the documentation, These collector service expose Zipkin compatible REST API, which accept both Thrift and JSON, and by default is disabled. It can be enabled with this flag. This is what I'm gonna do. Basically, for my use case or application using these Zipkin compatible REST API to feed the tracing spans to Jaeger collector component, right? Cool. And the other script is for query. Query is just run these Jaeger query executable. All right, that's pretty much in the files directory. All right, we got startup script ready. So the next step for running these executables as service, we need to configure unit file. So what we need to do, we need to go to templates directory. Here I create folder that's basically the location of all the systemd unit file. So we go to etc. I create folder structure based on that. So I go to etc and systemd and system. Here I created two services, one for collector, one for query. Let's take a look collector. And this is the unit file. So basically, if you need to, if you do it manually, you're gonna do the same thing. If you need to configure something as a service, you need to configure these unit file and store this file to that location at the systemd system, and reload the systemd daemon. That's basically what we do when we create service manually, right? So here we're gonna mimic the same procedure. For Jaeger collector, here I use this is my definition. So again, remember the difference between templates directory and files directory. File directory template. The difference between these two directories, for templates directory, we're able to do kind of like a modification. So we can include those variables that we defined, right? Like in the unit section, that description, and I just put in the variable we defined in the defaults directory. Is going to be for Jaeger. And remember, so these two components, Jaeger query and Jaeger collector, there is a sequence when we start them up. So the sequence is we have to start up Jaeger collector first, and then once the collector is up and running, we're gonna start query, because query gonna connect to collector to get those spins, right? So because there is a sequence relationship, that's what I defined here. So these ender units, these Jaeger collector service has to be before Jaeger query service. All right, and then we move to the main part, the service. So the type of the service is simple, and this is the exact start. This is the key part. So basically, it is gonna run that shell script we created just now and store in the files directory, right? And next, we said restart stand error. Basically, we're gonna pipe all those Jaeger component logs to syslog, and here this is what I mentioned previously. So this is the environmental variable I define. It has to be defined under the unit file. So like here, the Jaeger home variable. This is the variable where it's defined. Remember back to the files directory. Let's go there. So files and cat mains. Oh, sorry. So go to bin directory and Jaeger query or Jaeger collector. And here, I was calling that Jaeger home environment variable, and this is where that environmental variable being defined, right here, right? Same thing for samplers and parameter. Those are the other two variables defined in the defaults directory, right? Cool. Same as ES server URL and span storage type. We already went through those variable definition just now, right? And that's pretty much it. So let's cancel it out and take a look the other guy for Jaeger query. Basically, it's same thing. The only difference is just calling these Jaeger -query shell script we created earlier. Right? Cool. That's pretty much it. So we had these unit file, unit service configuration ready. So we can copy these two services file to the location in the destination VM, the Jaeger VM, right? So we're gonna need to copy these two files to the SC here. We're gonna copy to the systemd system service. Here, this is the location to store all the systemd services. All right, and once we copy the service file to this location, next what we need to do next is to reload the systemd. So that's basically a good use case to create a handler. So let's go to handler folder. Go to handler. Here I create, inside of these main the YAML file, I create a handler. Basically what this handler does is to reload systemd, and the command is systemsctl and daemon reload. Alright, and we have this handler ready. So in the test, once we finish up these two tests of copying the service file to the location, we need to call this handler to let it reload the daemon. All right, so we got the logic. Then we can go back to task directory to finish up our script or tasks. Here we go. And step 3, we're gonna, and step 3 and step 4, task 3 and task 4 is gonna be copy the shell script we created from the files directory. If you remember when I talk about the difference between files and files folder and templates folder, for files folder, remember we do not have to define the full path. I just need to define that bin directory in that file folder, and here something like this. I don't have to define the whole path. It's automatic. The Ansible is able to identify the location. And same thing for the other scripts for a Jaeger query. And then we move to the next step to copy the unit file for both collector and query to the systemd at the systemd system directory. And then here, once we here we're gonna because the service configuration was stored in the templates folders. I use templates, right? And then after the unit file is installed, we need to reload the systemd. So here I use notify. Basically, is calling that handlers to run that command we defined. That step was called reload systemd, right? Remember? So let's go back here. Go to the handlers, cat main, and as you can see, the name of this task is reload systemd, right? That's how we call it. So notify reload systemd. So it gonna issue these commands: systemctl and daemon reload. All right, that's pretty much it. Let's save it and test it out. All right, let's run the Ansible playbook command to see the new tasks we just created works or not. Oh, it returns some error. It says destination home OS boxes download Jaeger not writable. Okay, that's because, as you remember, when we log in or when we configure Ansible, let me explain here. So go to the Ansible. Go to the inventory file. This is what I configured. When we do SSH to the Jaeger VM, I was not using the root ID. I'm using these Ansible user. That's because it's not root. It's missing necessary permission, and that's why we got that not writable message. What we can do here is pretty easy. We can give these root permission by adding a become method in the Ansible playbook. So let's go to playbook, the YAML, and here we just need to add a stanza called become. Yes, that's it. And then we're gonna once it's run, it's gonna escalate to the root user to run those commands, run those tasks. Right, let's save it and run that command again. Ansible playbook. All right, another error is saying missing sudo password. Of course, is when we escalate or we sudo to root from that user, it definitely requires that password, but we did not define that password inside our configuration. What we can do here, we can add a flag in our Ansible playbook command. It's called -k and K. So basically, with this flag, there's gonna be a password prompt up. So let's see, enter. So here we're gonna type in the password, and then become password to sudo to root, right? All right, here we go. Now let's see, with the root permission, everything should work as expected. Yep, as you can see, it passed that step to copy the collector. You see, and now copy the script, Jaeger collector and Jaeger query script, and then it install Jaeger unit file and Jaeger collector unit file, and install Jaeger query unit file, and then reload systemd. That's exactly what we're looking for, right? And then let's verify. Go here. So firstly, let's enter this Jaeger directory. We should be expecting two shell script we created being transferred to here, right? Let's do a ls, and as we can see, we got these two scripts right here. And then let's move to the etc systemd system directory, and there should be two services, Jaeger collector and Jaeger query services being created right here. All right, that looks good. Then keep going. All right, we got our services configured. The last two steps are gonna be enable and start those services, right? So let's go to tasks directory to finish that. Here, so I create the last two tasks. It's gonna be firstly gonna enable and start service Jaeger collector. So I'm gonna use systemd module, and enable turns to true, and enable turns to true, and state gonna be started, and the name is a Jaeger collector service, which we just defined in the in our templates, right? And the last task will be Jaeger query. For Jaeger query, we're also gonna use systemd module, but we're not gonna start it because, as you remember, I mentioned there is a sequence has to be followed. We have to start Jaeger collector to make sure it's up and running correctly, and then start service. And then start Jaeger query. So actually, that sequence is being guaranteed by the service configuration. So if you remember, go back to the templates directory and go to the service configuration. So in the Jaeger collector service, under unit, I put in a standard code before, because these Jaeger collector service has to be started before Jaeger query service, right? On the other hand, in the Jaeger query service, I also defined these Jaeger query service requires Jaeger collector service, and it has to be after Jaeger collector service, just to make sure is followed that sequence, because we define these in the service systemd service configuration. So for Jaeger, back to the task, for the Jaeger query, I don't have to include the state stanza. So just the enable it will be fine, right? Cool. That's pretty much it. Let's save it and run our Ansible playbook command one more time to see if it works. Right. Let's run that Ansible playbook command one more time. Ansible playbook, and put in the password is Alright. As you can see, the enable and start service task worked, and enable Jaeger query task was successful as well. So let's jump back to the other VM session. the Jaeger VM session to verify if it works. All right, jump back to the Jaeger VM. I just need to issue a system cuddle status Jaeger collector service and system cuddle uh, status Jaeger query service. I can see both services are up and running, so looks good. All right. Thanks for watching. This is pretty much what I want to show for this week. Hope it helped you one way or another. All right, cool. I'll see you next week.
Alright, thank you for watching my video. If you think this video is helpful, you're more than welcome to leave any comments. Remember, thumb up, subscribe my video, and also hit the notification bell. See you next time.